5 ways to curate texts that inspire readers. This is episode 550.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Do you have a DonorsChoose.org project that needs funding? Today's sponsor is Advancement Courses, and they are donating 10% of their sales until September 27th to DonorsChoose.org projects. And also, if you're needing professional development, you get 20% off their 200 plus online courses using the special code just for 10-Minute Teacher listeners. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn more. Today, we're talking with Julie Wright, co-author of What Are You Grouping For? She's a 28-year educator and has lots of ways to inspire us to help inspire our readers. So today, Julie, we're talking about 5 ideas to curate text to inspire readers. Where do we start?
Great. Hi, Vicki. Thanks so much. Well, for me, we want to be able to think about curating text because when we select the right text for kiddos, it helps them become connoisseurs, which bolsters their reading volume and makes them want to read more. So that's kind of the gist of the reason for curating and how it inspires readers.
Okay, so we definitely want to have the right text. How do we start?
So one of the things that we found really, really helpful is just to use that proximity and kid watch. When we observe kids and we get close to their work, we think about what they're talking about, what they're interested in, and what naturally piques their interests. We notice that it really helps us understand what their interests and their passions and their curiosities and ultimately their needs are. So using that kid watching piece really helps us know what to curate in order to inspire them.
Interesting. I've never heard it calling kid watching. I mean, I think it's something that most, good educators do. We notice things about what kids are doing and if they're frustrated or if they're reading or what, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And, kid watching is a term that was coined back in the 1990s for some early literacy practices by Yetta Goodman. And we've sort of reinvented the word again and brought it back to the forefront, knowing that when we listen into kids, when we just sort of stay on the perimeter sometimes and listen to what they're interested in, we really can use that as some really interesting intel for then putting text in front of them.
Awesome. Okay. So what's our next one?
So I think one of the things that we sometimes miss out on is, surveying kids has been around for a really long time. Asking kids to fill out reading surveys and getting their thoughts on paper or voice to voice if you're conferring with them. But one of the things that we've tried to think a little bit more about is this idea of, finding things that are really relevant to their lives. So sort of enhancing that to today's world to think about asking kids, what is your favorite pop star? And who is your favorite YouTuber? And, if school let out early, how might you spend your next 4 hours? Understanding where kids are coming from helps us understand what they might want to read about so that you can start to curate some text about that. So if the idea is eyes on print, eyes on print, eyes on print to inspire readers and to grow readers, then we want them to have eyes on print around things that they really care about.
Totally. Absolutely. This, and we have to truly listen to kids and ask them good questions. Okay. What's our third?
So the third move that we can make when we're trying to curate text is to make sure that we curate a lot of text. The idea that if you know some stuff about kids and you know what they want to read about, giving them opportunities to actually read that kind of text. So it doesn't matter necessarily whether you're meeting with kids in small groups or independently. Both of those are important structures as well as whole group instruction. But the idea is that when you have a group of texts, to be able to gather those texts and let kids simmer and sort through those. So one example might be a group of kids. I'll use a small group as an example that might be interested in sports. So it might start by kids reading some Who's Who in the Sports Illustrated, which might lead to a bucket of books related to other sports figures, such as a Derek Jeter article or a chapter book related to Derek Jeter, or maybe a New York Times article about the Women's World Cup, maybe the bracket that's shared that has infographic kind of information where kids can sort and simmer through that. It might even be a little video highlighting some of the quarterfinals. The idea of eyes on print might lead kids, shorter text sometimes lead kids to longer text, such as a group thinking about sports. Some kids might end up wanting to learn all about the characters in Crossover, written by Kwame Alexander, or something as simple as maybe there's an old calendar with sports facts that kids can dive into. So the idea is that eyes on print creates volume, creates interest, and the hope is to inspire more and more reading.
Yes, and you're giving lots of examples of, reading on the internet and then reading a book and then reading a magazine. So lots of different types of texts, aren't
Absolutely.
you?
Because the idea would be to be able to really have kids have a common conversation around possibly a topic, but not always have to read the exact same thing. So that leads to this idea of we have to be able to be organized around our text. So sometimes let's take other examples, like maybe a group wants to learn about interesting things about George Washington or the invention of old toys or women in history. Or maybe kids just want to simmer around poetry, all different types and styles and authors, or maybe stories around characters that we can learn from. Anything like texts about a topic or texts about ideas then need to be stored somewhere. They need to be organized. So one of the things that I always recommend to teachers who are trying to take on this type of work is to think about using your resources in your room, whether it's a tub to gather all of these resources, like a sports tub. And then one thing that's really helpful is to give every kiddo a 2-pocket folder so that they can store those loose leaf pages in so that they can be organized, which is half the battle in a classroom, trying to keep everybody on the same page and organized.
Very much so. And that's our fourth,
Yeah.
isn't it? To organize our text and to really be intentional about that organization and encouragement. Okay, so what's our fifth?
So one of the keys to all of this is to make sure as a teacher that you're not doing this work alone, for multiple reasons. So getting kids involved in the curating for themselves and others. So let's take that sports group again. If a teacher has to curate all the time for all these different inquiries and different groups of kids, it can be kind of exhausting, but it's also a missed opportunity. So oftentimes we like to say, let's get kids involved. So a teacher might get kids started by putting a few things in that bucket that I requested. And so they might say, I'm going to stick a few things in there. But then as a small group comes together, maybe the job for during reading workshop or at home that night is to find one more thing to stick in the tub that can be a can-do read for the next day, so that tub or that folder starts to build. When kids get involved in the curating process, not only for themselves, but others, it's this social capital that happens where they're proud to be helping each other, but also finding things that they think that their peers might want to read. And that in and of itself opens up a whole new world for kids to say, if I'm reading about one topic and I'm interested, or my friends are, there's lots of stuff out there to read that might also be of interest or might also pique an interest. The best part about all of that is then kids get to start to decide. There's not one thing I have to read, but there's multiple things depending on what their mood is for the day or what their appetite is for the day. They get to kind of self-select, because one piece of text might not be exciting on day one, but maybe day 3 into a read about different sports things, it might have a different flavor for it.
Well, and moving from me to we, when we start reading and we get excited about reading, it really does change the whole classroom. The book is What Are You Grouping For? It has lots of incredible suggestions for putting together exciting and engaging reading learning opportunities. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
From now until September 28th, Advancement Courses, an online provider of professional development for K-12 teachers, is donating 10% of their sales to funding DonorsChoose.org projects. Go to coolcatteacher.com/give to submit your project for consideration. And if you need some awesome PD, 10-Minute Teacher listeners get 20% off any online courses with the code COOL20. With this coupon, a 3 grad credit course course for continuing education, salary advancement, or recertification is only $359. So go to advancementcourses.com/coolcat to learn more and use the code COOL20 to get your discount. Never stop learning. Here's your practical challenge for today. Apply what you've learned in today's episode and just pick out 2 more books for your classroom. Now, lest you think that this is just for younger students. For example, I teach digital film and I have a digital film library full of resources. I have resources of books for my maker space. So whether a student wants to draw or make robots, or I just have, copies of Maker Magazine's books that they had come out. So I curate books for my classroom so that when we're doing projects or we have maker activities or genius activities, that they have books to go to as resources. And I think this applies to every classroom. Take the challenge and curate 2 more books for your classroom and bring them in. And feel free to tweet me and let me know what you did.